Disappointed by Rocketman.
Fuck no, dog. I love this movie. What about you?
That Egerton stock is on the rise, man.
High fucking yield, man. Bye,
Yeah.
bye, bye.
um, Directed by Dexter Fletcher, who replaced Bryan Singer for the
Yep.
last couple weeks of
How
shooting on
about
Bohemian
that?
Rhapsody. Probably a good person to have come and direct your next biopic, musical biopic. Um, yeah, I thought this movie was great. I think my main takeaway is Elton John really made some good songs that I enjoy listening to. And he also seems to really have a lot of issues with his parents, which uh,
What gave you that idea?
he just didn't seem to like him very much. I don't know. Uh, uh, yeah, but so it's hard to talk about this movie without talking about Bohemian Rhapsody because it's going to be, Bohemian Rhapsody won. Bohemian Rhapsody won Best Picture last year. uh,
Did
which
it?
is just,
You sure about that?
I'm not sure about that actually. Now I'm
Green
thinking
Book one.
Green Book
Remember?
won. Sorry,
Yeah.
Green Book won. Rami Malek won Best Actor last year
And it
for
won
Victory.
the 2 sound awards.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of issues with Bohemian Rhapsody. You can check out our breakout for that. But I think mostly what it came down to is Bohemian Rhapsody, for as awesome as some of the scenes were, and I think Live Aid is one that stands out.
For
It
sure.
kind of felt, I don't know, a bit soulless in a way. I don't know if that's the right word
Yeah.
necessarily.
It just felt like we're just going through the motions of the story, the plot, a real life Queen story, except when we change things, which was often.
Yeah.
But we're just kind of getting from music moment to music moment, so we
Right.
can do the sing alongs with the songs we know you in the audience like, and you can watch Rami Malek do a really good Freddie impression when he's performing, and that resonated with a lot of people, and that's why the movie was such a big success. I mean, this movie made fucking $800 million worldwide. People like Queen, you know.
Yeah.
But the
And
movie was just incredibly safe and a little bit stale if you actually try and analyze it as a film. And I don't think Rocketman is that, which is why I like it so much.
yeah, and Rocketman, I think almost something like Across the Universe feels like a movie that's more comparable in terms of vision. Like the fantastical elements of it
Yep.
are really a lot similar in that sense. But where Rocketman excels, where a movie like Across the Universe, I think, doesn't, is the music is what drives the plot. Whereas in Rocketman, Taron Egerton and his relationship with Bernie throughout,
Yep.
played by
Jimmy Bell.
Jimmy Bell, uh, is what really drives this whole thing. And
Mhm.
the music is used to emphasize those emotions in that moment and to really bring you to a place. And I think it adds more to the character rather than feeling like this movie is about the music. And I think that's
Yeah.
why I enjoyed Rocketman so much, is that this felt like a story about someone rather than here's some cool visuals to these songs you already know.
Right. And like I think maybe for some people, I mean, this did a minus cinema score, which is fantastic, obviously. But some people will probably be like, I wish we didn't cut away from Rocket Man the song so fast. I kind of like the sing along stuff because they want that following up Bohemian Rhapsody. But you're right, they don't take the time to go all karaoke for 5 minutes. They have the songs come in, and usually it's in a fantastical sense, which is really cool. It starts off early, but I think it's a really effective way of introducing the hit songs of Elton John's career, which a lot of them came in a very short amount of time. Uh,
Yep.
but having that focus on driving the story, whereas Bohemian just kind of felt like we were having the story get us to the next song.
Yep.
And some people probably prefer the latter, but I think if you're talking about filmmaking, even if this movie wasn't as fantastical and just kind of felt formulaic, like some of the other parts might feel to some people, it just is a much more inspired choice of storytelling, and that's why I feel like this movie just is inherently going to age way better. And that's despite the fact, like Taron Egerton, we had some reservations once we heard about the movie because he is singing, and Taron Egerton is not Elton John, obviously. So that inherently is a risk, And I mean, you can listen to his versions in the movie or listen to the soundtrack. They're not Elton's versions, obviously, but I think they're good enough. And
Yeah.
sometimes you're just good. And when we have that in a movie, I feel like it just kind of brings more. Like Bradley Cooper sang in A Star Is Born,
Mhm.
and that was great. You know, and I think Taron, he's I don't think he's as good of an actor straight up as Rami, but I actually like the choices he made in this because he's actually allowed to make choices. Whereas Rami was just doing more of a uh, mimicry of sorts, which was still incredibly impressive. But Taron, I feel like actually tried to embody Elton a little bit, and part of that thing is the choice of the script is they don't sanitize the story of Elton John. This movie's rated R. There's drugs in this. There's sex in this. Bohemian
Mhm.
Rhapsody largely flattened out everything gay about Freddie Mercury, which, if you ask most gay people, they were not a fan of that. You know, so
Yeah.
and it's not like Rocket Man is pornographic. They don't actually really show that much, but they don't run away from anything. And frankly, I feel like that goes a long way because that's just frankly not what we see often in mainstream entertainment.
Yeah. And I think that probably has two things. I think if Freddie Mercury was as involved with this as Elton John has been with this
Yeah.
biopic, it probably would have. Bohemian Rhapsody probably would have come out a little bit differently. Elton John has been on board with this being made, I think, for like the last 20 years. I mean, people like uh, Justin Timberlake were attached to this at one point.
Oh
Uh,
god.
play Elton John. Tom Hardy was at one point attached
Oh
to play
god.
Elton John. This has been in the works for a while, and I think it actually
Tom
ended up.
Hardy would have loved wearing the costumes. I'll tell you that.
He would have only worn the costumes, only masks and big glasses.
Only mask.
It would have been insane. Honestly, though, Edgerton brings such an energy to this that feels, in one sense, rock star, and in another sense, like broken person. And I think that embodies
Yeah.
exactly what the movie was going for. And this movie obviously doesn't work if he's not good,
Oh,
because it
100%.
starts off with him, storming in to tell his story in basically like an AA or like a support group type setting.
Hmm.
And that's kind of like the plot
The
moving
framing.
points.
Hmm.
Yeah, the framing of the film. But then pretty much every scene from there on out is about him. And I can't actually think of a scene where he's not in. Um,
Oh yeah.
so just
Wow.
amazing work by him. Uh, I also thought that the performances from the Dallas Bryce Dallas Howard. I'm sorry.
There you
Uh,
go.
Jamie Bell and Richard Madden
Yeah,
were
of
really
course.
strong. Although Richard Madden playing the same guy that Aidan Gillian plays in
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody is just,
John Reed.
yeah, just so ridiculous. I wish they had just had one of them play both.
It's a dead man switch, Vicky.
That Game of Thrones switch up, that little
Yeah,
finger
that's
switch
pretty funny. You,
up.
well, you mentioned that Elton is the producer of this movie. Some people are like throwing that out as a negative. And the thing about Bohemian Rhapsody, that of course had heavy involvement from Roger Taylor and Brian May,
Mhm.
and you can see the choices they made with their influence on Bohemian Rhapsody. We can rewind a few years. Remember when this was supposed to be a very hedonist tale, R-rated, with Sacha Baron Cohen as Freddy, and then the Queen people are like, "Oh no, we don't want that. We actually want more of a hagiography about Queen," and that's what we got. They went
Brian
away
Brian
from most of the conflict.
Brian May's like, "Oh, you want to hear this interesting story about Freddie Mercury's sexuality? Well, watch me tell them how I made Another One Bites the Dust.
Well,
Here's here's how I
hold,
developed We Will Rock You. Clap,
hold
clap,
that
clap."
thought because I actually want to go back to Another One Bites the Dust, but
Okay.
because Rocket Man doesn't run away from the problems that Elton had in his career, and yes, it's still about the great man. Obviously, it's still self-serving in a certain sense, but because the movie is very much about the ups and downs, I don't find it a problem
Mhm.
that Elton was so involved with a movie about him. Um, Also, because the movie's so fantastical, the liberties it might take with the facts, frankly, are just way more forgivable. Because, frankly, uh, from what 1971 to 1990, he gets sober in 1990. That's just a big blur in Rocketman. It's really tough to know when things happen. The Dodger Stadium performance and I'm Still Standing. Like everything's kind of out of place. Like I'm Still Standing came out, I think, 7 years before he got sober, for example. But
Mhm.
because it's being framed as Elton at AA, just kind of going through his memory, it's okay. That's out of order. And the very first time I really thought of this was when he's like, "What's your last name, lad?" And he's like, "Elton." And he looks at a picture of John Lennon, and there's a little glow, like a little halo around John Lennon's head, and he's like, "John," or you know if he says it, but it's like obviously that wasn't supposed to be taken literally, right? But the
Right.
problem is Bohemian Rhapsody. They had this argument in the studio, and they very seriously were like, "Oh shit, lad, what's that? Is that another one bites the dust? We're gonna stop fighting now and make this smash hit song." And
Yeah.
it's told so it's told as if
Matter of
it was
fact.
true,
Yep.
and it just that's just where the movies differ. You know, they said they have two very different ambitions.
Yeah. I did want to correct something I said earlier. Edgerton is not in the beginning of this film because it's Elton John as a child.
Mhm.
But once it's Elton as an
Correct.
adult, he's never seen. But I agree. The fantastical elements, I think, play more like a memory, more like Elton John. Like you're seeing it through his mind, reflecting on these things. And I think some of that fantastic elements didn't quite stick. Like the ending therapy scene is like a bit
It's
of
on
an
the
eye
nose.
roll. Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, okay, like I get it. Like you didn't need to be this blatant about it, but I think overall it really adds to like this feeling of like just jumping from place to place. This like person who was dealing with this brokenness and with drugs and alcohol. I mean, you kind of get that sense of him just like jumping around when he basically just wakes up in these memories
Mhm.
and he's kind of like trying to figure out how he got there, whether it's when he like takes off from Dodger Stadium as a firework and explodes into the plane going over, then he's having this
Mhm.
conversation with Bernie. It's like,
As a Rocket Man, you could say.
yeah, another bit on the nose, fantastical element, but um, I think a lot of it actually really added to it and made you feel like, okay, I'm inside the head of this character rather than, oh, this is how things actually happened, which was one of our biggest gripes with Bohemian Rhapsody, like you already said. So, um, any other thoughts on this? I mean,
You
I think,
know,
man,
I mean, yeah, I've had, I believe you too have had stock in Taron ever since Kingsman 1, where he
yes,
just immediately busts on the scene as this incredibly debonair, charismatic English chap. And you're like, that guy is a star,
Eggsy,
Eggsy.
chap,
And, you know, we haven't got as much since then. You know, Robin Hood last year, big flop.
mm-hmm.
It, on the surface sounded like a cool idea for him. Movie was just way too bad for him to have any chance, right? Uh, in Eddie the Eagle didn't really blast off or anything, but that was actually his first work with Dexter Fletcher, and I was just waiting for Taron to do something apart from Kingsman because you could see that talent. And I know maybe some people will watch Rocketman and be like, Taron was really good in the song. He was actually a really good singer, but maybe someone else could have done it a little better. But I'm really happy that he actually got picked for this, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was because Dexter Fletcher had that relationship with him. That's how it goes. But I'm just really happy he got this look because you just know it's gonna spiral from here now for him, which is really great. And obviously his relationship with Elton John throughout all the press, you know, like seeing him cry at Cannes after the standing O they got,
Yeah.
it's just kind of like really heartwarming.
Yeah, he
um,
seems like a super sincere dude, which is great.
yeah,
Um, m my only
and
gripe with being cast as Elton John is he's way too handsome.
yeah,
Like
that's what people were saying. And you know, that kind of leads me to something I was thinking is like, given my age, given your age, we only know of Elton John as an old man. Obviously, like this movie's in the 70s. Like, obviously, we don't know about that, but I didn't really have any frame of reference for like Elton as a in the moment celebrity. I wasn't actually really that familiar with him in that regard. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think. Like,
he was
I
the
guess
Lion King guy to
I
me.
guess Lion King is my first exposure,
Yeah.
but like this movie reminds you of like this dude just has fucking records, man. And because it's like cool piano rock, it's just like these are records that are like so unlike most other stuff. Like who else has hits that like sound like this? Does anyone? Like Billy Joel, I guess. Like
Yeah, that's
it's just I've listened to Elton John like for like 4 hours since I saw the movie yesterday. Like
yeah,
and that's a great uh a great thing to accomplish when it's a musical. So
I found myself in the theater having a similar thought of like, what current artist can just sit at a piano and like command this much attention? And I didn't really come up with anybody. Um, it's really impressive. And he obviously, back when he first was coming up, and the movie shows this, I think, really well, was a lot more rock. And I think the way I knew him growing up was as this like piano ballad type guy,
yeah,
with these really intricate songs. Like Bernie's. I didn't realize he had a writing partner actually until this
yeah,
film.
same.
Bernie's writing is like, it's almost like poems in a lot of ways. It's not
Mhm.
very straightforward. A song like My Song or even Rocketman is very like complex on
You're
different levels. And I, I think what this movie does for people of our generation is it kind of helps to not only see Elton John for who he was and and kind of meld that with who he is now, at least in our minds, but it also kind of helps us understand that it wasn't just him. Like, he had help, and I think that is actually a really great thing to add in, because I always thought it was just him alone writing these songs.
same. Yeah, and
Same.
I like that they don't. Again, that's something that Elton John, as a creative force on the film, could have skewed that a little bit to kind of retell his history. Obviously, why would he? This is his best friend. Like, he wouldn't lie about this. That's the kind of
Right.
guy he is. But um, showing the cracks, quote unquote, in the man, and having that actually be a big force in the third act of the movie when he's, having his breakdowns. It's really
Yeah.
really compelling stuff, whether you're familiar with the story or not.